At 3 a.m. on May 2, 2026, a Spirit Airlines flight took off from Detroit and landed at Dallas-Fort Worth. It was the last commercial flight Spirit Airlines would ever operate. By sunrise, the entire airline was gone. 17,000 people lost their jobs overnight, 60 routes stopped operating, terminals across America went dark. It was the first shutdown of a major U.S. airline since 2001. But the biggest ripple hit one specific place, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. For the previous 27 years, Spirit had built Fort Lauderdale Airport into its flagship hub. Their headquarters was down the road in Dania Beach. 11 million passengers a year moved through Spirit's Fort Lauderdale operation. When the airline died, it left behind the biggest empty airport hub in America. And within 24 hours, JetBlue had taken it. Not slowly, not carefully, immediately. 11 new destinations announced the same day Spirit collapsed. $99 rescue fares offered to stranded Spirit passengers. Job offers extended to Spirit's crews. By summer, JetBlue was flying nearly 130 daily departures out of Fort Lauderdale, 75% more than the year before. Their market share jumped from 24% to 36% overnight. For the first time in the airport's history, JetBlue became the #1 airline at Fort Lauderdale. This is the story of how one airline's death became another airline's most important bet, and why Fort Lauderdale just quietly became the most contested airport in America. Let me give you the number that frames everything: 150. That's how many daily flights JetBlue is planning to run out of Fort Lauderdale by peak winter 2026. According to JetBlue's own president, Marty St. George, Fort Lauderdale will match Boston in scale. That would make it tied for the second largest operation JetBlue runs anywhere. For comparison, before Spirit collapsed, JetBlue was running about 68 daily flights from Fort Lauderdale. That number is more than doubling in under 6 months. Why this matters? JetBlue is doing this while retreating everywhere else. They exited 15 cities and killed 50 routes across the network: Bogota, Lima, Quito, Manchester, and dozens of secondary markets, all gone. JetBlue is shrinking almost everywhere in America, except at Fort Lauderdale. At Fort Lauderdale, they're making the biggest single airport bet in the airline's 26-year history, and they're doing it while the company is losing hundreds of millions of dollars a year. That's not a normal move. That's a company betting its future on one specific airport. Once you understand why, the entire strategy makes sense. Here's why this matters more than a normal airline shuffle. Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport is the 19th busiest airport in the United States. It moved 32.2 million passengers in 2025 and peaked at 36.7 million before the pandemic. It sits 21 miles north of Miami and less than 2 miles from Port Everglades, the third busiest cruise port on Earth. That last fact is the entire reason this story exists. Every year, close to 5 million cruise passengers move through Port Everglades. Most of them fly into Fort Lauderdale first. This makes FLL not just a normal airport, but a permanent, guaranteed leisure gateway, one that generates predictable, high-margin traffic regardless of what happens to business travel. For Spirit, this was perfect. Cruise passengers wanted cheap flights. Spirit provided them. Their entire business model was built on packing budget travelers into narrow-body jets and flying them from northern cities to South Florida for a week at sea. For JetBlue, it's better, because JetBlue can serve the same passengers, but also sell them premium seats, mint business class, extra more space, extra legroom. JetBlue's average customer spends more than Spirit's did. Same route, higher revenue per seat. That's the bet. Same passengers, better economics. And Fort Lauderdale just became the perfect place to prove it works.
To understand Fort Lauderdale today, you have to understand what Spirit built there. Spirit moved its headquarters to South Florida in 1999, made Fort Lauderdale a focus city by 2002, grew it into their primary hub by the mid-2000s. By 2024, Spirit was flying 11 million passengers a year through Fort Lauderdale, 31% of the entire airport. They operated more than 60 routes. They based crews there. They rented enormous ramp space. For 6 straight years, Spirit was the #1 airline at Fort Lauderdale. Then, everything broke. November 2024, first Chapter 11 bankruptcy. March 2025, emerged. August 2025, second Chapter 11, nicknamed Chapter 22 in the industry. March 2026, submitted a reorganization plan. April 2026, talks with the federal government about a $500 million bailout collapsed when creditors refused the terms. Then, the Iran war spiked jet fuel prices. Spirit couldn't survive another cost shock. On the morning of May 2, 2026, Spirit ceased operations. The end of a 33-year airline, the first major U.S. airline shutdown since Midway Airlines folded after 9/11. The Broward County Commissioners actually voted to consider buying Spirit's former headquarters building. That's how completely the airline vanished from the region it had defined. But Fort Lauderdale Airport wasn't going to sit empty for long, because inside JetBlue's headquarters in New York, a plan had been waiting for exactly this moment. And when Spirit died, JetBlue moved faster than anyone in the industry expected. The day Spirit collapsed, JetBlue announced 11 new destinations from Fort Lauderdale. 6 of them were brand new to JetBlue's network: Barranquilla and Cali in Colombia, Baltimore, Charlotte, Columbus, and Indianapolis. 5 more connected existing JetBlue cities directly to Fort Lauderdale for the first time: Nashville, Detroit, Houston, Chicago, and Ponce, Puerto Rico. Most of these routes started flying by July 9th, 2 months after Spirit collapsed. They offered $99 rescue fares to Spirit passengers holding invalid tickets. They matched Spirit Elite status for people who cared. They opened jump seat privileges for Spirit pilots trying to get home. They offered interviews to Spirit flight attendants and ground crews. Then the scaling began. By summer, JetBlue was running about 106 daily flights out of Fort Lauderdale, up from 68 the year before. Their market share jumped from 24% to 36% by capacity. For the first time in the airport's entire history, JetBlue became the #1 airline at Fort Lauderdale. The premium moves came next. JetBlue announced the dedicated Mint crew base at Fort Lauderdale for early 2026. They started exploring their third Blue House Lounge, a premium airport lounge product they'd only opened at JFK and Boston. In June 2026, they announced Mint service from Fort Lauderdale to San Diego, the first premium transcontinental route from FLL, plus 8 daily Mint flights to LA and 3 to San Francisco. This is not a takeover of a discount hub. This is the conversion of a discount hub into a premium leisure gateway. JetBlue's president, Marty St. George, put the strategy in one sentence. He called Fort Lauderdale the third leg of the stool. Alongside JFK in New York and Boston Logan, Fort Lauderdale is now one of the 3 cities JetBlue is building its entire future around. This is the piece nobody outside the industry noticed. JetBlue has been shrinking almost everywhere for 2 years. They exited 15 cities under a turnaround plan called Jet Forward. They dropped flying to Amsterdam. They walked away from Newark. They eliminated more than 50 routes across the network. The savings from that retreat is what's funding the Fort Lauderdale expansion. CEO Joanna Girardi said in a recent statement that Fort Lauderdale is the star of the network. St. George said Fort Lauderdale has been a star for us for years. The Jet Forward plan explicitly identifies Fort Lauderdale as one of 6 focus cities receiving all new investment, the others being New York, Boston, Orlando, Los Angeles, and San Juan. That's the trade JetBlue was making. Cut everything else, double down on the leisure hubs, bet the airline's future on the customers who fly to South Florida and get on cruise ships. And Fort Lauderdale is where they're proving it works. But JetBlue is not the only airline chasing Spirit's leftovers. Frontier Airlines went hardest at the national opportunity. They added 9 new routes and 15 daily departures across 18 former Spirit markets. Their Fort Lauderdale operation grew 114% year-over-year in early 2026. But Frontier's biggest single win was actually San Juan, not Fort Lauderdale. Southwest, historically Fort Lauderdale's biggest South Florida carrier, has been retreating from FLL for years. Their passenger count fell 37% in 2025. They shifted their international flying to Orlando. Southwest now controls about 9% of Fort Lauderdale, a fraction of what they used to. American Airlines added capacity and now sits around 6.6%, up 18% year over year, but their real fortress is 21 miles south at Miami International. They're not fighting for Fort Lauderdale. They already own the airport people take seriously. Delta has about 12% share, United about 8%, both stable, neither aggressive. The airport is being restructured into 3 tiers: JetBlue as the dominant leisure gateway at 36%, Delta and Southwest fighting for the mid-tier, and the ULCC replacements, Frontier, Breeze, Allegiant, fighting each other for whatever budget passenger volume Spirit left behind. For the first time in decades, there's no ultra-low-cost airline running Fort Lauderdale. It's now a premium leisure hub, and that changes what kind of passenger even considers flying into the airport.
Fort Lauderdale is not overtaking Miami. Miami International Airport moved 56 million passengers in 2024, nearly double Fort Lauderdale. American Airlines' Latin American empire runs through Miami and is untouchable. Emirates left Fort Lauderdale in 2020. Norse Atlantic left FLL for Miami in 2023. When international premium carriers pick a South Florida airport, they still pick Miami. Fort Lauderdale is also not without problems. It's one of the most delayed major airports in America. It has only 2 runways. Terminal expansion is progressing, but slowly. The current Terminal 5 project is a $404 million build, not the $2.3 billion sometimes reported. And JetBlue itself is fragile. The airline suspended its 2026 profit guidance after the Iran war fuel spike. They're carrying real debt. Founder David Neeleman publicly warned about bankruptcy risk in April 2026, a claim the CEO disputed, but the market noticed. So, the story isn't that Fort Lauderdale has won, it's that Fort Lauderdale has been reset. A completely different airport is now emerging from Spirit's ashes, and JetBlue is building it. Here's the way I keep thinking about this. Spirit spent 27 years turning Fort Lauderdale into the ultra-low-cost hub of America. They died on May 2, 2026, and their empire disappeared overnight. 17,000 jobs, 60 routes, an entire airline's worth of infrastructure, gone. But the passengers didn't disappear. The cruise ships didn't stop sailing. Port Everglades didn't slow down. Broward County didn't suddenly become less popular. The demand was still there. It just needed someone to serve it. JetBlue was ready. Faster, more aggressive, and more strategic than anyone in the industry expected. They didn't just replace Spirit, they converted a discount hub into a premium leisure gateway, made Fort Lauderdale their 3rd most important focus city in the network, and quietly turned an airport most Americans think of as Spirit's backyard into JetBlue's most important growth bet. The next time you fly into Fort Lauderdale, look around. Almost every plane at the gate will be JetBlue. The lounges will be JetBlue. The crew base will be JetBlue. The route map on the wall will be JetBlue. The airport isn't dying, it's being rebuilt in real time. And by the end of this decade, Fort Lauderdale will either be JetBlue's crown jewel or the most expensive mistake in the airline's history. Right now, it's both possibilities at the same time. And that's what makes it the most important airport story nobody is talking about. If you want more of these, the airport stories nobody else is covering, subscribe and I'll see you at the next gate.